A storm began in Washington the day the pardons were announced. President Donald Trump used his pardon power in a significant way. He cleared individuals connected to the legal battles following the 2020 election. The move was not entirely unexpected. He had spoken of it often, yet the reality of the action sent shockwaves through the political landscape. The act itself was simple. The consequences, however, are deeply complex. They touch upon the very foundations of American law and justice. The nation watched as the news unfolded, trying to understand what this meant for the country and its future. This was a promise kept from his 2024 campaign trail. Mr. Trump had repeatedly pledged to support those he described as victims of political persecution. He framed these individuals as patriots caught in a biased system. His supporters saw this as a righteous act of justice finally delivered. They believed the legal system had been weaponized against the former president and his allies. For them, these pardons were not just about freeing individuals. They were about correcting a perceived wrong. They were about fighting back against a system they no longer trusted to be fair or impartial. Critics, however, viewed the pardons through a starkly different lens. They immediately labeled the actions as a blatant abuse of power. They saw it as a president using one of his most profound authorities to protect political friends and loyalists. The term cronyism echoed across news channels and social media platforms. Opponents argued that the pardons undermined the rule of law. They said the move sent a dangerous message. The message was that loyalty to a political leader could place someone above the law. The White House issued a formal statement defending the decision. The administration described the pardons as a necessary corrective measure. They said the actions were aimed at healing the wounds of a politically divided nation. The statement argued that these individuals had been unfairly targeted by a deep state apparatus. This narrative casts the president as a defender against shadowy, unelected forces. Opponents countered that this rhetoric was dangerous. A prominent legal scholar wrote that the pardons felt more like an act of self-preservation than national healing. The debate over the president's true motive began instantly. At the center of this intense debate are several key figures: Rudy Giuliani, Roger Stone. Mr. Giuliani, once celebrated as America's mayor after 9/11, later became a central legal figure in efforts to challenge the 2020 election results. He faced numerous legal and ethical inquiries for his actions. Mr. Stone, a longtime political strategist and confidant of the president, has also faced significant legal scrutiny over the years. These pardons halted some ongoing legal proceedings. They also cleared the path for others who had already been convicted, erasing their federal offenses. The pardons were not limited to just a few high-profile names. The list included a number of other individuals who had been charged or convicted in connection with events surrounding the transfer of power after the 2020 election. Each name on the list represented a specific battleground in the larger political war. Supporters of the pardons see these individuals as soldiers in that war. They believe these people were unfairly prosecuted for their political beliefs and their loyalty. To them, each pardon was a validation. It was a sign that their fight had been recognized and honored by the highest office in the land. Opponents, however, pointed to the specific actions that led to the legal troubles. They argued that these were not matters of political opinion. They were matters of law. Public reaction to the pardons has been swift and deeply divided. The numbers from recent polling paint a clear picture of a nation split along partisan lines. A Gallup poll conducted shortly after the announcement found that a majority of Americans disapproved of the pardons. However, when broken down by party affiliation, the data tells a different story. More than 80% of self-identified Republicans expressed approval. Hashtags supporting the president's decision trended alongside hashtags condemning it. Supporters posted messages celebrating what they called the liberation of political prisoners. They shared articles and commentary that reinforced their view of a corrupt justice system. Meanwhile, critics filled their feeds with expressions of outrage. They argued that the pardons represented a new low in American politics. They warned of a slide toward authoritarianism. Beyond the borders of the United States, the pardons have also drawn attention. Some international observers and human rights groups have expressed concern. They worry that when a leading democracy like the United States appears to excuse the actions of powerful allies, it weakens global norms. An unnamed European Union diplomat suggested the move could embolden authoritarian leaders in other countries. They might see it as a precedent for protecting their own cronies from accountability. This international unease adds another layer to the domestic controversy, raising questions about America's role as a model for the rule of law on the world stage. The U.S. Constitution grants the president the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. This authority is one of the oldest and least restricted powers given to the chief executive. Historically, it was intended as a tool of mercy. It could be used to correct injustices or to heal national divisions after a conflict.